Hey guys, welcome to the Husker Rundown. If you watched the game, you obviously saw Nebraska dominate McNeese State, win this game by 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns like you all predicted. But that actually didn't happen. Nebraska is able to walk away somehow with a 31-24 victory. If not for Amir Abdullah catching a 58-yard touchdown pass, this could have been an absolute tragic afternoon for Nebraska fans. But instead, they walk away from this one able to breathe a sigh of relief. And there was a lot of things that went wrong in this one. You could go to a lot of different moments, but first the Abdullah play just at the end to be able to get into the end zone. He had to break 6 tackles. I'm sure you've seen it by now. It's all over YouTube. Really kind of putting him in the Heisman discussion if he wasn't in there before. And it was a pretty pedestrian day for Abdullah beforehand. I mean, you really couldn't look at anything he had did and anything that he had done to that point individually and said that it was impressive. I mean, Kai ran for, I think, 54 yards before that. Really had not broken out yet, but saves the Huskers with 20 seconds left. They did not want to have to go to overtime against the McNeese State team that had absolutely nothing to lose. I couldn't even find the last time McNeese State beat a ranked team. I still don't have an answer to that question. They hadn't even played a ranked team since 2010. That was against LSU. So they let an FCS team come into Memorial Stadium and pretty much dictate the tempo for the entire second half. I thought there were a lot of key instances that kind of just put Nebraska on its heels, and they didn't necessarily know how to respond. I thought the early injury to Kenny Bell definitely played a factor in that one, slowed the offense down. You could just see that Tommy Armstrong didn't have the options downfield necessarily. You know, Jordan Westerkamp isn't exactly used to being in that number one role yet as a college receiver. He's not used to being the focal point of a secondary. And I thought that it was an adjustment for him to be able to get open. And then the Huskers lose Jamal Turner. He's actually out for the season with a torn Achilles. Just another awful injury for that guy. It just seems like a guy that can't catch a break right now. Kenny Bell is going to be evaluated day to day. He's got a groin injury, but Tommy Armstrong didn't necessarily have those options, and they did. McNeese State, credit to them, they did a really good job of loading the box and being able to shut down Amir Abdullah. I thought that played a big factor as to why he wasn't able to get going. I mean, this is a guy that really hasn't had a bad game. I mean, really the last time that he maybe performed under his own expectations was the Iowa game last year. But I mean, go back and look at some of the individual games he's rattled off, and really not many people have slowed Amir Abdullah down. So I'm sure there's a lot of teams in the Big Ten. They're going to look at the game film of this one and are definitely going to put it in their back pocket and say, this is how we shut down a back that has pretty much torched the rest of the conference and the country for that matter. But I thought there was just a lot of things wrong with this performance. I think that was the big takeaway point. Bo said afterwards, thank God for Amir because it covered up a lot of mistakes that this team made. And I thought defensively, some of the issues just seemed to repeat itself. The defense couldn't necessarily get off the field in the second half, and they obviously missed the presence of Randy Gregory. Anytime you lose a preseason All-American, that's going to change the game plan. But local interest. Jack Gangwish, sorry, I will pronounce that name right on the first try one time. I promise. He admitted he struggled a little bit. He didn't necessarily prepare the way that he wanted to mentally. He just didn't necessarily give the effort that he wanted to give in what could end up being his only start this season. Randy Gregory is expected to come back next week. At least that's what the coaches are saying. But this was just seemed like it was tough to get pressure on the two quarterbacks that McNeese State rotated in and out. They didn't really have much of a passing attack. If McNeese State had a passing attack in this one, I mean, they could have been up by a touchdown or 2 potentially. Just did not seem to be able to get that play to push them over the top, and could have had it with 2 minutes left here. Driving against Nebraska and got inside the red zone, but Huskers were able to hold them to a field goal. And I mean, there was a lot of worried people in this stadium, and this could have definitely changed sour really quickly. I think there's a lot of takeaway points from this, especially offensively. I think that was the most worrisome thing, was for as good as Nebraska looked last week on offense, they just seemed to take a big step back. And you can point to individual things. You could say the loss of 4 of the 7 receivers on Nebraska are currently injured and weren't available for Tommy Armstrong. But there were things before that I noticed. I mean, the decision-making with Armstrong on that pick 6, Nebraska is knocking on the door, about to go up 21-7, and Armstrong throws just an awful read, awful decision. That was pretty much what Bo said afterwards, and it led to an interception return for a touchdown. It was the second longest interception return for a touchdown that Nebraska has ever let up in school history. And that was just a play that just kind of put things in perspective a little bit. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, they're not going to necessarily run away with this one. This isn't going to be the blowout. And Nebraska just couldn't get that big play on offense until Abdullah, obviously with 20 seconds left, to really put them over the top, to give them some breathing room. It just seemed like the entire game you're just waiting for that long, successful, sustainable drive. But Bo kind of even admitted afterwards there was a little bit of maybe Manila-ness in the play calling, and they didn't necessarily expand the playbook. He said, you know what, we got out-coached. I thought that was a big difference between Bo this year compared to last year. Hearing the press conferences where Bo last year against Wyoming, against Northwestern, there wasn't that accountability from him, maybe from the rest of the coaching staff of, I messed up, I didn't plan right, the game plan wasn't working, I didn't adjust well enough. Bo had that today, and I thought that was pretty telling. Maybe that comes with job security. Maybe the fact that Eichhorst has shown that faith in Bo. He's not as on edge and worried about defending his decisions at every turn. But he admitted, he's like, you know what, I got to take a long look in the mirror. Our whole team does, because this was a letdown for Nebraska. This is definitely a game that they were expected to win. I think the pregame line, I think, on this one was 36 points. I mean, not exactly a game you're supposed to be grinding out in the last minute and having to, come up with late touchdown drives. You look at what happened. I mean, you lose two of your top receivers in this one, and really the first two games of this of Nebraska's schedule, you can look at and say, all right, well, Nebraska is able to get wins, and wins are the only thing that matters. But you lose Randy Gregory, you lose Kenny Bell, you lose Jamal Turner. You're losing key contributors in games that you're supposed to be winning by a lot of points, and that's not a good sign going forward. But Nebraska is 2-0, and they are going to have a tough test at Fresno State. Anybody that was just willing to write off Fresno State based on the Week 1 performance that it had against USC, I think those people are taking another look at that one, saying that's not exactly a gimme. But at the same time, I think a game like this, an experience like this, can be good for any team. I think it makes practice that much harder. It makes guys kind of realize that you really can't take anything for granted. It's coach speak to say every team is able to compete, but until you actually see it, I think that's what kind of drives the message home. So it'll be really interesting to see the way that Nebraska responds to its first road test of the season. Could still be banged up a little bit. Who knows if those top guys are going to be healthy and ready to go. I'm interested to see. I think this definitely puts a storyline that maybe we didn't expect after last week, and that's why you don't look into too many games that are won by 48 points. So. Stay tuned for this one. It'll be good. As always, Husker season. Would you expect anything else? I wouldn't. So for the Husker Rundown, this has been Connor O'Gara. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in a couple weeks.